Company Limited or its advertisers.
Good afternoon and welcome to another edition of On Point for today, Friday the 14th day of February 2025. And of course today is Valentine's Day, and I want to wish everyone out there, whether you're a lover, whether you're not, whether you celebrate the day or not, it is a day that is on the calendar for us to recognize. And so I want to just express my best wishes to all who are celebrating this day. And indeed, if you go around Charlestown, everyone is in their red, and I even see my technician here is in her red glasses. Well, I am in something that represents red as well. Maybe it's not so much red, but it's close enough, and that is the color of today. Red signifies love, and affection, I suppose. So good afternoon and happy Valentine's, and if you're enjoying a Valentine lunch with your significant other, enjoy it, and hopefully it is embellishing and tasty. Okay, so I want to go on and say good afternoon to all who are listening us here at Von Radio 860 AM. My name is Alexis Jeffers, and of course I'm here every Friday afternoon for the On Point show, which has been around for just over a year, so it's always my pleasure to come and spend some time with you. So I want to shout up all of the parishes here on Nevis: St. James, St. Thomas Parish, St. Paul, St. John, St. George Parish, and of course all of our listeners and viewers down there in St. Kitts who are tuned into Von Radio at this point in time. Of course we have to go further afield, Statia, Sabre, French and Dutch St. Martin, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Puerto Rico, and up into the United States, East Coast, into the heartland of America, the Midwest, and over into the western flank of the United States, and of course Canada, whole of Canada, including Toronto and Ontario and those places where we have some citizens who are there for various reasons, and indeed up in Europe, United Kingdom, France, Germany, and of course all of Europe. We do have, if not one person from the Federation who might very well be in all of these countries. So that is why we spend some time to recognize, of course, over in Asia, and more specifically there in the Republic of China, Taiwan, where we have students and citizens who live there as well and work there. I want to say good morning. It's just after 1 a.m. in the morning there on a Saturday morning, so I want to say good morning to them as well. So I've covered the entire globe and that is always something that we have to do, because we do need persons to listen to all of the broadcasts or the programs that are being broadcast here from Von Radio. There will be no radio station without listeners and viewers, of course, because Von Radio is being beamed through the different social media platforms like Facebook and YouTube. So it is important that we recognize everyone for taking their time out. And as we always say, the persons could have been elsewhere doing something else, but they have chosen to spend some time with us here at Von Radio, and for that we are very grateful for that, and we thank you. Of course, at the onset of the program, we normally would want to just pay some respects and solidarity with persons who are in the bereaved column. And indeed, I cannot speak of anyone in particular whom I have not spoken about before. Last week I did recognize the family, the grieving family of Mr. Robert Bitt Clark, who will be laid to rest next Friday, I believe the 21st of February, over there at the St. Thomas Anglican Church. I believe the funeral service starts somewhere around 1:30, and so if you can make it there next Friday, of course, go on out and support the family. Of course, Bitt, we said a whole lot about him last week, and we can say much more, but I believe the message has been conveyed. that bit was a very good and decent chap who we would have lost way too early. And of course, the following day, which would be Saturday the 22nd, down there at the Wesleyan Holiness Church in Charlestown. That is the church opposite Flo, you know, where you go and pay those telephone bills. That will be next Saturday, the 22nd of February. And of course, the time I am not certain about, but just listen up to Von Radio, because I'm sure at some point you'll hear the exact time. But I am aware that it is this next Saturday at the Wesleyan Holiness Church down there in Charlestown, the 22nd of February, that is. And indeed, we spoke about Mr. John Atherton III, who will be laid to rest on the 28th of February. That is Friday the 28th of February. And I believe that that church service, that funeral service, starts at 11 a.m. down there at the St. Paul's Anglican Church, which is the church he attended and the church that he served with distinction as well. So we said a lot about these three gentlemen last week, so no need to go back there, other than to say let us go out and support the grieving families at these various funeral services, or we call them homegoing services in some regards. Okay, and anyone else who are in the bereaved column at this point in time, I express my profound and deepest sympathies to you on the passing of your loved one. Moving right along, where there is death, there is also birth, and where there is birth, there is celebration of a birthday as well. So today is my very good friend's birthday up there in Orlando. She is at this point in time, Miss Margaret Williams. And those who are not familiar with Margaret, Margaret is the sister of now deceased Mr. Carl Williams, who was a former permanent secretary in the Ministry of Tourism. So Margaret has been my friend for a number of years, and Margaret, I love you. I say it on radio, I love you dearly, and I hope you will celebrate this birthday as you normally would. Celebrate it as if there's no other. But we wish you many, many more birthdays. I remember last year we celebrated together. Yeah, last year, yes. I'm giving out some news and some story here on radio, but I don't think Margaret would mind at all. Interestingly, Margaret was born on the 14th of February. Significant, and that is why she's a loving person and someone who, you can count on, and someone who gives you all in terms of when she said she's going to do something, she generally does that. And I want to say, Margaret, enjoy the rest of today. I don't know what the weather is like up there in Orlando at this point in time, but I know normally, or within the last couple of weeks, it has been very cold. If it is not so cold today, well, go out and have a lunch, go out and have a dinner, and do whatever you can to enjoy this one. No need getting into your age. I don't even know. I never asked you, so I really don't know. But anyway, whatever it is, we would wish you many, many more years of celebration of birthdays to come. And then, of course, today, I did hear this on Von Radio this morning. My good friend there, Mr. Bernard Myers and Verdon Myers, are celebrating an anniversary today. Yeah? Well, Bernard, someone will tell you I mentioned this publicly, but of course you're celebrating a wedding anniversary, it appears, and I want to congratulate you because you would have picked one of the finest out of Brooklyn, and that is Verdon. Verdon was initially, or her maiden name is a Glasgow. She's a Glasgow from over there. You all know Keith Glasgow and the Glasgow family over there in Brickhill. Verdon is connected to that family. Of course, I recall the name of her father. Well, that same shop that you see there in the heart of Brickhill, Squeeze Them Up Bar, that is where her father would have done his business back in the day. At least had a shop there and used to bake bread and what's not. We used to call him Papa Glasgow. Papa Glasgow, I don't remember his correct name, but he used to make some wonderful bread in those old stone oven. No temperature gauge or anything. They used to heat it up and then put the bread in, and they used to come out brown and nice, nothing burnt, well controlled. How they got it done, only God knows, but they had that skill, and that is Papa Glasgow, that is, had that skill. And Verdon is his daughter, and of course, like I said, Bernard Myers is now her husband, and they're celebrating today. And I say, have a wonderful anniversary celebration. You've had many years of celebration, so I suppose you know how to celebrate. So go ahead and do that. Yeah. Okay. Very good. I just spoke of the weather. Like I said, I'm not sure what the weather is like in every particular neighborhood throughout the world, but I know for sure here in Nevis we have had some indifferent weather. And I said to someone the other day that January and February this year is a complete opposite to what we had last year. Of course, we started off 2024 with a lot of hot weather, dry and hot weather, and that went on throughout most of last year. We have started in a much better way this year, in the sense that we've been getting some rain. Some may say we need some more rain. Of course, the more the merrier, but of course we've been getting some rain. The place is green and lush here on Nevis, but what has happened is that we're getting a lot of high wind, torrential wind. Well, is it torrential wind? Well, whatever, gusts, wind gust or whatever. You have torrential rain, you have wind gusts. Well, I just corrected myself, so no one take that and make a meme out of it. Yeah. But anyway, we've been having some high winds, and of course I want to appeal to all fisher folks that the seas are rough these days and they're considered unsafe. I don't know if there's any bulletin out there that has been issued in terms of high wind, high waves, or that has been issued. Okay, my technician is saying that has been done. So I want us all to and when I say all, we have family members who go out on the ocean to ply their trade. So I want us all to be cognizant of the challenges that are out there and be safe on the ocean. Take your cell phone with you, take your life jackets with you, take whatever other pieces of equipment that are needed to ensure that you can survive if there are any challenges or difficulties. Because I believe I would have seen something yesterday with two fishermen down there in it must have been one of those Windward Islands. I don't want to be too. Perhaps it was Tobago, perhaps it was Tobago, yes, where two fishermen went out into the ocean or went to sea, and they left their cell phones in their vehicles on land. Well, those cell phones are no use to them if they're going to leave them in their vehicle on land. So all of the communication devices that you have, take them with you. Just secure them properly in whatever way you can secure them, and of course whatever other pieces of equipment you're asked or mandated to take with you, please do so. And remember, the stress and the worries that are left behind when you are gone, or you're lost at sea, is something that we just don't want to deal with at all, if we know that you could have done otherwise in terms of securing yourself out there. So I went that route because yes, the oceans are there to make a living, and many of you go out there on calm days. It is a challenge, and in these rough seas it is doubly or triple or whatever you want to say. The challenges are multiplied, if I were to put it that way. So I want us to be cognizant of all that and be safe out there, because all of us depend on what you do in terms of the catch that you'll bring back and what we are expecting. on Thursday the 27th of March and Friday the 28th of March. So 2 days down there at the E.T. Willett Park, and of course that event continued to grow year after year, and this year should be no different. At least we would want to even go further and say our farmers perhaps will have a lot more on display this year, because the weather cannot be blamed this year. At least water cannot be blamed as an issue this year for not having decent yields or decent crops, because at least the water situation here on the island of Nevis, I believe, is not necessarily fixed, but it's certainly better than what it was last year this time, and it is getting better every week, every month, and every year. So if water is available, that's one of the resources that is needed, when it comes to crop production. Land, of course, is needed, and of course you have to apply labor to that. So water, that ingredient, that resource is available to you as farmers. So I ask you to go out and farm. Do your farming. I'm not so sure how much you can get done if you haven't planted as yet for the 27th and the 28th of March. But whatever you're doing, continue to press on, because the resources are available to you these days. So that, of course, I wanted to put that in so that persons can start preparing. All of the farmers, agro-processors, meat producers, that is your livestock farmers, for example, all of you who contribute to the success of this particular event, I'm asking you to go ahead and do what you can to make sure that this year is just as big as in the past, or perhaps exceed what we have done in the past as well too. That would be good for agriculture, of course. The Nevis Mango Festival, that is in July, the 4th to the 6th of July. Sounds like it's far away, but keep in mind we are already at the middle of February. So if we are at the middle of February, therefore means time is moving quickly. Soon we'll be out of February into March, into May, then into June. April, May, June. Yes, so soon we'll be there. So I'm asking you to keep that in mind. And those who are listening overseas, if you have to make your plans, it is important to know these dates so that you can start to, get your dates correct and your plans in place, and book your ticket, and book it early, because the earlier you book it, perhaps the cheaper that ticket will be. So, and then, well, you don't want to say, well, when the time comes, the tickets are too expensive and you can't make it. But I want you to come, so start looking for tickets now. You can purchase ticket well in advance and come on down for that weekend, 4th of July to the 6th of July. And indeed, if I were to say, last year, for the 10th anniversary or the 10th staging of Mango Festival, it was phenomenal. It was huge, and as such, the organization and everything was top notch. So there were lessons learned from the previous year for the 9 stages that were remedied and implemented for the 10th edition. So based on that, there is a good template now for the 11th to be even bigger and even more phenomenal, if I were to put it that way. So we're looking forward to that as well. So that is July 4th to the 6th. So I just thought that I'll put those in, and I have done so, and I'll move on quickly. We have been hearing a lot about the price of eggs in the United States. Of course, there are some situations being dealt with there, whether it's bird flu or influenza or some diseases that are spreading throughout some of those egg producing states in the United States. And indeed that has impacted the price of eggs in the United States. There is a high demand for eggs and a low supply of eggs. So when the demand is high and the supply is low, of course price will be impacted, and so that is the case in the United States. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because whereas you are seeing prices in the United States at $10 US per dozen, for example, I haven't tracked the prices in recent times, but I know there have been some serious prices there. I have seen prices here on the island of Nevis where someone would have posted something showing $22.52 for a dozen eggs here on the island of Nevis. And I want to say to the the folks here on the island of Nevis that local eggs, when I last checked, and I say local eggs because if you import eggs from the United States and you're reselling here in Nevis, for example, you want to cover your costs and make a profit, and that is why you'll probably see a dozen eggs in the supermarkets or wherever for $22.52. But what I want you to do is look at that carton, that container that the egg is in, the eggs are in, and look and see if it says local, or it says, or it has on that brand name emblazoned upon it from the farm that it came from in the United States, and you'll see the difference. Because eggs here that are produced on the island of Nevis are going at $9.50 per dozen, I believe. I checked with a farmer and that's what I was told. Perhaps another farmer is selling for $1 more, or maybe even $1 less. But anywhere around $10 EC, thereabout, will be a dozen egg here on the island of Nevis. So we hear all of these things and we see these things on Facebook and so forth, but I am imploring our people to check these things out, yeah? Because when I saw $22.50 for a dozen egg, I said those couldn't be local. And why I say that is because here on the island of Nevis, as in the case in the United States, there are subsidies being offered to poultry farmers, especially our egg producing farmers here on the island of Nevis. Supply Office offers subsidies on the feed and other items down there. Of course, the containers that those eggs are placed in are sold by the Supply Office at a subsidized cost as well too, and it will say local on it, which brings me to something that I believe that the administration may want to look at. And this is just coming to mind, that perhaps it is time for us to look at implementing or putting legislations in place whereby locally produced items are labeled as such and sold in the supermarket as local items and labeled as local items in the supermarket, and the price should be reflective of that as against imported items, for example. Because I am saying this, that several trade changes have taken place throughout the world in terms of trade policies, and as those trade policies change throughout the world, of course they're going to affect us here in the Caribbean, but more so in Nevis. And so we are encouraging our farmers to produce more, but also be cognizant that you're competing with what is coming from abroad. But once you're competing, it does not necessarily mean that you'd want to look at the price that is coming into Nevis and get close to that price, because you should be more about turnover than trying to at least gouge our local consumers. Because if you're getting all of these subsidies here, as many other countries in Europe and the United States does, their price is normally reflective of those subsidies, and so we're hoping that our farmers here, especially our egg producing farmers, will keep those prices at a reasonable rate, a reasonable price, which is anywhere around $9.50 could be considered to be reasonable. Some may say it was cheaper before, yes, but a lot of things have changed in recent times, in that to purchase the layers or the chicks that are needed to lay these eggs, of course the price have gone up in recent years. So if the price has gone up, feed prices have gone up, but be that as it may, all efforts are being made to ensure that the prices at the supply office and so forth are kept at the lowest possible. So that's why these subsidies are being offered to counter many of the things that are happening internationally. Like I said, trade policies are going to continue to change, and you hear all of the tariff that are being imposed by the United States on trade partners and that kind of thing. Follow these things because they have a rippling effect on the entire world and our economy as well, and our people. But I am so proud of what I'm seeing in the poultry industry in terms of egg producers, because I can say this: when we came into government in 2013, those who managed agriculture then was, whatever they were doing then, I will tell you that what was happening in the poultry industry was nothing short of efforts to undermine our poultry, for bona fide, I must say, bona fide poultry producers, or egg producers. What I mean by that, anyone who could have gotten a license, and there were persons who were importing various items like provision, vegetables, fruits, and that kind of thing. They were also importing container loads of eggs. And so they were bringing in these eggs from the United States. At that point in time, eggs were cheaper in the United States because, like I said before, most of the difficulties there are the challenges that they're having now with various diseases and so forth. But they were bringing in these containers of eggs. I'm talking about 20-foot containers of eggs. And then going to the hotels, supermarkets, and selling these eggs. Underselling our egg producers. So what do you think was the difficulty for egg producers then? They couldn't get their eggs sold. They were feeding these birds, buying the necessary feed and investing in their farms, but they were not getting the sales. When they go to St. Kitts and they go to a supermarket in St. Kitts, that supermarket would tell them, listen, such and such already brought some eggs from Nevis. And that wasn't a poultry, a bona fide poultry a farmer or producer. So we went about our business and said, no, this cannot work. We have to save that sector. We have to save the poultry industry. And that is why we implemented a policy whereby only bona fide poultry producers or egg producers could have gotten a license to import eggs. Why we said this is because, of course, we were trying to protect our poultry farmers, yes, but also those who were buying eggs like supermarkets and so forth. We figure that the bona fide poultry farmer should be the one importing those eggs to ensure they control that market or maintain that market and then sell to the supermarket. And it worked, and it is working. But of course, we have this policy in Nevis. I don't think the same policy exists in St. Kitts. So some of the supermarkets would then import eggs into St. Kitts and then transport them over to Nevis. Well, you cannot plug every hole. But I can say this, that many of the egg producers on Nevis have been able to thrive as a result of that policy that we implemented back in 2013 when we took over the management of agriculture here on the island of Nevis. So I am pleased to say that I am happy to see so many egg producers here on the island of Nevis. What would have happened if we did not do what we did then would have meant that we would have seen our poultry farmers leaving the sector one by one, two by two, because they wouldn't have been able to survive. They would not have been able to survive. And so I'm happy that we would have made that move. And I say we are reaping some success now as a result of decisions made then back in 2013. Because I just told you what the prices of eggs are in the United States and what they are here in Nevis for locally produced eggs. So I am pleased that we are able to cushion that particular difficult situation and make it a lot easier for our poultry farmers here on the island of Nevis. And better days are coming, of course. And I will go one step further and say, you know, when you get eggs from the United States, you see small, medium, large. Well, here in Nevis, you pay for what? You pay for large, small, and any size. All sizes, same price. Large eggs, brown eggs, white eggs, whatever the case might be. In the United States, they tend to compartmentalize these things and say, well, you know, large eggs, small eggs, medium-sized eggs, brown eggs, white eggs, whatever the case might be. And you pay accordingly. Don't you? You pay for what you get. Just one size fit all here. Listen, I'm so happy for poultry farmers and continue to produce. And as I know it, and I think it's the case, most times the challenges would come in December when you have increased baking and so forth at the various bakeries and hotels and at various homes, when people have a larger demands for eggs at that time. I spent some time with that because I am pleased with the efforts that we have made back in 2013 when we reversed what was the trend then to protect a sector that is now working for us. And that is the good thing about our decision-making process as a government, and I am pleased about that. And I had to mention that. Yeah? Okay, let's move on. Lands. Last week I would have spoken about some lands issues and so forth, and I'm going to revisit that this week, because I did say last week that we would have purchased somewhere in the region of about 100 acres of lands over the last 10 years as a government. And as the minister responsible then, I always look back at that and say, well, the effort was made to look after the best interest of the people of Nevis, and also to ensure that we had lands in our land stock as well as a government. Because if you cast your mind back to 1983, when we gained our independence, the NRP was the government of the day, and all of the lands in Nevis, Crown land that is, were taken over or vested in the responsibility of the Nevis Island administration. Of course, the NHLDC was established in 1984, I believe, yes, and the job or the mandate of the NHLDC was to alienate lands from the Crown to whomever the final buyer is, because the Crown cannot issue certificate of titles to persons, but the NHLDC is the entity that would issue that final title to anyone who purchased lands or buy a property or whatever the case might be from the Nevis Island administration. So they would have pretty much taken over all those Crown lands then. And of course, over the years, the NRP hasn't had to, they wouldn't have had to buy any lands during the period of time between 1983 to 1992. I doubt if they bought any, because all of the lands, thousands of acres of lands here on the island of Nevis, Crown lands, were vested into the responsibility of the Nevis Island administration. Be that as it may, of course, over the years, the land stock has dwindled, and indeed, how do you replenish that? Is to buy land, acquire land, whatever the case, lands, whatever the case might be. So between 2013 and 2022, 23, thereabout, the Nevis Island administration through the NHLDC would have purchased just over 100 acres of land. And I wanted to go through those because I checked my records and I looked and I said, we did a phenomenal job in buying and negotiating for those particular tracts of lands. And I'll tell you what became of those lands as well too. But I will say from the onset, during the time I was there as the Minister of Lands, we acquired one piece or one tract of land, and that was the Herbert's Beach lands, which is, I think it's about 13.9 acres of lands for 6.4 million EC dollars. But let me go through the list of lands that I would have had a responsibility for acquiring or purchasing. And before I go through that list, I'm going to compare this list to what the NRP would have done during the year 2000, the years 2006 to 2000 and let's say to 2013 January. They acquired 2 acres of lands down there at Pennies, and I want this to sink into the people's head, people of Nevis. When you're leaving Charlestown and you're going down towards Pennies, before you get to Pennies Hotel, cast your eyes to the left and you'll see some old buildings there sitting on 2 acres of lands that has cost the people of Nevis $30 million. If you're coming towards Charlestown, once you pass Pennies Hotel, cast your eyes to the right towards the ocean. Look at those old buildings, and they're sitting on 2 acres of lands. Those 2 acres of lands would have cost the people of Nevis $30 million. I want you to wrap your head around that and understand $30 million for 2 acres of land with some old buildings. You see, the reason why I'm revisiting this is because when you trap the NRP into the nonsense they would have done, they start to come up with all kind of diversionary tactics, changing the narrative, putting all kind of things on Facebook and talking all kind of foolishness that doesn't answer the question as to why would the NRP put the people of Nevis in such a debt. 2 acres of lands for $30 million down there at West Haven. $30 million. I want that to sink in, you know. And I start that way because I'm going to give you an idea as to what get out of $30 million before you can do anything with 2 acres of land. So that is where you have to compare both parties in government. And I will go further and say, even down at Indian Castle, yeah, you remember hearing the NRP talking about Aman Hotel. Every day you see Aman Hotel coming, Aman. I will tell you that when we got into government, and we were also convinced that the lands belonged to the government. We didn't have to buy them, of course, but they were held by way of deed, a deed. And as far as I am concerned, under the law, you hold something via a deed, you're just holding an empty paper as far as I'm concerned. Anyone with any properties that is being held by way of a deed, I don't want to say you're holding a worthless piece of paper, but I would tell you to run fast and get a certificate of title for those lands. Because anyone can come along someday and present a certificate of title for those by doing whatever is normally done by those who know how to do it, and get those lands transferred into their names. And you might think you have lands, but when it's all said and done, you're holding nothing. So we had to regularize those lands down at over 250 acres of lands down at Indian Castle. When the NRP was talking about a development to come, a hotel to come, we didn't have any lands down there as far as I'm concerned. So we had to do that, and now those are in the land stock of the Nevis Island administration. We own them fully. Yes? Same thing with Bath Hotel. One day we were hit by this news that some NRP developer here on the island of Nevis had gone to done some research on the Bath Hotel lands. And of course they were moving towards transferring those lands. And we said, oh wait, all the years we've been hearing that the government owned Bath Hotel, and of course there was no title in the government's possession for those lands. So we had to move to regularize those as well too. So these are efforts that we have made in the interest of the people of Nevis to ensure that we protect our patrimony and to make sure young people have access to lands here on the island of Nevis, access to housing, and ensure that there are lands in our land stock for those to come as well. Yeah? So that is what we've done. But, you know, as I mentioned the NRP and lands, yeah, I can recall when I first assumed the responsibility of Minister of Lands. A certain gentleman who is no longer with us today came into my office with a pro forma invoice for $18,000 and a copy of a 3-page proposal that he claimed that he would have submitted to the previous minister. A proposal for housing development at the back of, well, sandwiched between Government Road and Marion Heights. Marion Avenue, sorry. Not Marion Heights, Marion Avenue. That road going up as you exit, what do you call it? Happy Hill Drive, going up that side, and Government Road. Somewhere at the back of offices that are up that side, doctor's office, somewhere up that side. Behind Hunkins and those places. But this gentleman came with an invoice for, a pro forma invoice for $18,000 for a 3-page document. Said he did this proposal for housing development in that area, and he wasn't paid by the previous minister. Well, all I told him, listen, I didn't engage you. If I were you, I would look for the previous minister and ask him what, because I didn't know anything about this thing. All I know, I can tell you this much. There were multiple proposals that were done for all kinds of lands. All those 14 acres that are 14 pieces of lands that were acquired by the NRP, monies were paid. Monies were paid not to the landowner, but those who did whatever valuation, whatever proposal. All those persons were paid monies, but the poor peoples whose lands were acquired, poor people, I ain't see one rich person name on that list whose land was acquired by the NRP. Poor people. And when I say poor, P-O-O-R, poor people's lands were acquired by NRP. 14 pieces of them, which included the same 2 acres of land down there. Not one soul received payment for their lands. That was the most consistent thing about that side of the equation. But on the other side of the equation, those who went about the valuation and acquisition and whatever the case might be, they got paid. And that is the sad part about those whole transactions. All of those transactions. And so when you see people coming with dirty swimming pool and all kind of foolishness, I think people need mental evaluations in this place, you know. Some people need to be mentally checked. Because if, for example, persons in the diaspora are going to gravitate to those kind of nonsense, you must know what the facts are. These are the facts I'm putting to you. 103 acres of lands that were bought and acquired by the Concerned Citizens Movement over a 10-year period, valued at just over $20 million, as against 2 acres of lands down there at Rest Haven with some old buildings. You can't even say go down there and put in a window in them. You'll have to break them down. Break them down and start all over again, so you actually paid for the land. $30 million. That is what we have been saddled with by the NRP. Then they say people matter. What they say, performance matters? Well, they say performance matters. We say people matter more, people matter most. And that is why we continue to fight for the people of Nevis. These facts can never evade us. We cannot let these facts evade us. No way, no how, not at all. And people must be reminded of these things. Just as they did then, they'll do worse next time if they get a chance. They'll do worse. Because I'm going to go on quickly to this electoral process, you know, because they have been talking about electoral process. Listen, the NRP, I tell the NRP there are certain things in Nevis, leave them alone. Because you have no moral authority to address certain things. Leave lands alone. Leave the electoral process alone. The only party in government and the only ministers in government whose name have appeared on any electoral thing in Nevis, electoral petition in Nevis prior to these who tried something recently was the NRP. What they tried was thrown out of court because of noise foolishness they brought. But we must recall that in 2011, 2012, those were the darkest days in our history when it comes to our democracy. The darkest days. Those were the days when persons who walk into Charlestown, persons who were yet alive, were told that they were dead. They were walking to Charlestown, and because the NRP didn't like them, the NRP went and take off their names. Cool, so. Couldn't vote, didn't vote, and so the matter was taken to court. You all could say what you all want about Mark Brantley, but he stood up and defended our democracy. I know that we were granted universal suffrage somewhere back in 1948. He wasn't the one. He's the one who is responsible for us having the right to vote. But he's the one who would have protected that right in 2011.
And opinions expressed on the preceding program were solely those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Nevis Broadcasting Company Limited or its advertisers.
And you are just listening to a rebroadcast of the On Point program, which was first aired on Friday, February 14th, 2025.